Rochelle. Where did the name come from? The information provided from research by Curtis, Ogden, and Marion Rochelle follows. Rochelle was a surname taken from the port city of La Rochelle, France. In the port city of La Rochelle, 250 miles northwest of Paris, two Huguenots named Henry and Pierre Ganot were released from jail and conscripted to sail with Lafayette to America during the Revolution. They were commercial seamen, one reported to be a sea captain. When the ship landed in the Carolinas, Lafayette turned north to join General George Washington, leaving his crew on their own. They fled. Henry Ganot can be traced to Florida. Pierre can be located next in New York State, where he married. Upon the surrender of Cornwallis, Pierre Ganot feared he would be returned to prison in France. He fled and settled in Newton, New Jersey, under the name of Rochelle, name of the port city in France which had been his home. One of his sons was Peter Rochelle, who migrated west and settled at Valley Junction, Iowa. Peter and his wife, Eleanor McLennan, used their home as a way station for the Underground Railroad to hide slaves being transported to the Detroit area. The Peter Rochelles had 11 children, the eldest being Joseph Rochelle, born in 1827. From there, the story continues. Albert Rochelle, son of Joseph and Margaret Rochelle, was born on a farm near Valley Junction, Iowa, now part of Des Moines, in 1868 or 1869. The Joseph Rochelle family had recently moved to Iowa after having pioneered in western New York. The Rochelle family had 7 children, Albert being second youngest. In 1894, Albert came to Wyoming. He and a group of young men were interested in heading to Alaska, seeking their fortune during the gold rush days. According to accounts passed down through the years, he stopped in Shawnee, Wyoming, to visit his sister and brother-in-law, Mary and George Blaine. Word was received while he was in the Douglas area that the charter boat which was to take them to Alaska had caught fire and sunk. This event staged the establishment of the Rochelles of Wyoming. Albert decided to take sheep on shares to survive. The lure of the West and the potential for opportunity brought him to stay in 1898. He later became senior partner of the Lance Creek Land and Livestock Company, which at one time operated sheep and horse ranches in Niobrara County and grassed 10,000 head of cattle on the Churn Ranch in Nebraska and on the Rosebud and Pine Ridge Indian reservations in South Dakota. The arrangement on the Indian reservations was in cooperation with the government to raise cattle and hay for the war effort during World War I. At some point in time, his business ventures in agriculture also included him being identified with mineral and coal development. The town of Rochelle in Campbell County is the site of one of his first ranches. To date, there is still a post office and a voting district by that name. One of the largest active coal mines in the Gillette area bears the name of Rochelle. The hills surrounding his ranch were named the Rochelle Hills and are still referred to as such. The story now moves to Kathleen Ogden, born in Leon, Iowa, November 20th, 1877. She too grew up in a large family, also engaged in agriculture. Kathleen Ogden is pictured standing on the right with her other siblings. A later photo includes their parents. The family, predominantly female, produced a lovely crop of women. Upon graduation from high school, Kathleen attended normal school for 1 year, which qualified her to become a school teacher. She taught in primary schools in Leon for 8 years before deciding to come west. Even then, this remarkable woman's heart was beating the beat of a woman's liver, term unknown at that time. She was attracted to Wyoming because of her advocacy of women's suffrage. Wyoming was known as the equality state. She took a job as the first primary school teacher in Lusk, Wyoming in 1906. Kathleen Ogden's schoolmarm is shown in her attractively decorated classroom. Somewhere along the way, Albert Rochelle came into town long enough to hear about the lovely new teacher, Kate Ogden, also from Iowa, and he came a-courting. Kathleen is seen in her formal engagement photo. Albert is shown in a photo near that time. Information is that he was 35 years old when this was taken. On June 7, 1907, Kate Ogden became the bride of Albert Rochelle. They took their vows at St. Mary's Cathedral in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Travel from Lusk was on the Burlington Northern Railroad. Following vows at the cathedral, they journeyed on to Colorado Springs. They are seen honeymooning aboard 2 mules at the Garden of the Gods. The Rochelles were definitely late in marrying, but lost no time in establishing themselves in the Lusk community and starting their family. This union was blessed with 6 living children in 10 years, the last being born in 1917. Kate Rochelle is shown proudly adoring her firstborn son, Ogden. Shortly thereafter, there is another Rochelle son named Marion Francis, and then Rodney James. A photo of Curtis William has yet to be found. Was this woman so busy with dishes, diapers, and civic causes that she forgot to have his picture taken? We hope to find one. At last, the girls began to arrive. First, Margaret, pictured at about 2, and Jean, born in 1917, the last Rochelle of this particular part of the family tree. Those early years in Lusk were good ones. 1917 and 1918, the ranches and the Rochelles were prospering as well as producing. Cattle were selling at the unheard-of price of $200 a head. Rodney is seen pulling baby Curtis in a wagon. Note the lack of trees in Lusk, Wyoming at that time. Later, we see Margaret, Curtis, and Rodney in their Sunday best. Their mother would have loved disposable diapers and wrinkle-free fabrics for this growing brood. Christmas morning in Lusk was a jolly affair from the looks of the little Rochelles. Their parents had donned them in their Sunday best, undoubtedly for Christmas church services somewhere. A little time later, the 6 Rochelles of Lusk, Wyoming, are seen posing for a great picture. Ogden at the top of the ladder, Marion, Rodney, Curtis, Margaret, and Jean, the baby now growing up. Jean and Margaret are seen bundled against the Wyoming winter. Margaret and Jean are seen posing on the running boards of their car in front of the family home in Lusk. A hollyhock grove at the side of the house provided the background for this picture of the Rochelle kids now growing up. At the top left is Marion, Ogden, and a neighbor youngster. Bottom row left is Margaret, Rodney, Jean, and Curtis. They look like happy youngsters, being molded in work ethic, citizenship, and life in general by their energetic parents, Albert and Kate. After the end of World War I, the arrangement with the government for inexpensive leasing of land and cattle selling for the unheard-of prices came to a decided end. Cattle prices dropped to $32 a head. The bank in Denver, which bankrolled Albert Rochelle, went under. Signs of the Depression were everywhere. Albert Rochelle and his partner, E.J. Penny, were broke. The family was destitute. The ranches and the family home in Lusk were lost in the settlement of debts. 1924, 25, and 26 were desperate years for the Rochelles of Wyoming. Albert took a band of sheep south of Douglas at Esterbrook, Wyoming. Ogden, Marion, and Rodney had become sheep herders also. Their conditions were harsh. During all this deprivation, Kathleen Rochelle decided to run for the legislature. She was the first woman to be elected to the legislature from Niobrara County and the 4th to be elected in the state of Wyoming. At the same time, Albert had scraped enough money together and borrowed enough from friends to purchase the Dan Ralston Ranch 3 miles from Arminto for $11,000. After moving their family from Lusk and establishing the 6 children in school, Kathleen Rochelle left them to go serve in the legislature for the sum of $12 a day for 6 weeks, a needed sum for family necessities. Her first election certificate is signed by Nellie Taylor Ross, first woman governor in the United States. She is pictured in a campaign poster from an election in the 1930s. While serving in the legislature, Kathleen Rochelle distinguished herself as a genuine contributor and enjoyable orator and introducer of legislation. Legislation of note, which we continue to hear about yearly, is the introduction of a bill proclaiming December 10th as Wyoming Day in this state. According to a news clipping, the bill passed. The photos show the Dan Ralston Ranch as it became the Rochelle Sheep Company in 1928. On the back porch of the building, Kathleen is shown with Rodney, with the wheelbarrow, Jean, Curtis, does she have him by the hair? And Margaret, along with the faithful sheepdog and puppies. The diet of the Rochelles of Arminto, Wyoming, changed little. Occasionally, there was the addition of sage chickens, shown with one of the herders, Jean, Margaret in the sombrero, and Curtis in front of the sheep wagon, home sweet home. Ogden, shown in a solitary pose in front of a sheep wagon, was not happy with his life as Rochelle sheepherder number 2. The many hundreds of sheep on the Rochelle ranch were not to be for him. As soon as possible after high school graduation, he headed for the University of Wyoming, where he attended 2 years, having to quit because of a lack of funds. The photo inscribed Christmas 1928 shows Rodney, Joe, Albert, and Ogden after being left at the Arminto train station for vacation. The Rochelles were now well on their way to adulthood, with college, high school, and junior high in their lives in Laramie, Lusk, and Arminto. Marion is shown in front of the family vehicle. Albert, Curtis with ukulele, and faithful sheepdog are shown somewhere on the ranch. Margaret and Jean and friends are shown at the local swimming hole and beach in the Arminto area. A car, some fellows, and some young ladies appear ready to make an escape, probably into Arminto for an evening of entertainment. The year is 1933. In 1934 and 1935, they continued to pursue various forms of adult entertainment. Woodsies, some suds, and who knows who is in this clutch. The early 30s, the Rochelle family purchased the apartment building we all remember as 333 West 8th Street. What a relief to the now lovely adult Rochelle females to be living in Casper, where people resided, not Arminto, population 37. Living quarters were tight, with the 6 Rochelle children, now adults, living with their parents in a 3-room apartment in order to rent each of the other units for $16 a month, a total of $48 a month income for their real estate venture. Money was still scarce as the Depression began to end and we approached another world war. Kate and Albert Rochelle are pictured separately in front of their real estate holdings in Casper. Margaret and her father appear ready to take a drive somewhere in Casper, perhaps around the block to take a look at the newly completed Natrona County High School, where she and some of her siblings graduated and where grandchildren of Kathleen and Albert Rochelle have also attended and graduated in the past decades since 1935. Fortunately for those cramped into the tiny apartment on West 8th Street in Casper, the new generation of Rochelles grew to adulthood and began to leave the crowded nest to establish their own lives. The first to leave was the youngest, Jean. She was the first to marry of the 6 Rochelle children. She married a handsome manager for the J.C. Penney store, Emmett Osborne from Longmont, Colorado. Money had been a problem during his young adult years. Hard work and no college were his outlook, so he hitched a ride with the developing management of the J.C. Penney Company founded in Wyoming. The young bride was reported to have worn a lovely gown, Wallace Simpson style, and blue, actually purchased at a fire sale after the shop had caught fire. She continues to stock bargains to this day. Margaret was the next to form a new family unit. She had become engaged and married a dashing young engineer employed by the Bureau of Reclamation. George Angelovic was a native of Rock Springs with strong ties to the mining population, which fueled that town's economy. Like Ogden, he escaped, found a Rochelle lass in Casper, and roved the continent with his Margaret and their brood. Margaret and George honeymooned at Treasure Island in San Francisco. In the photos, Margaret appears very determined not to let this fellow get away. She not only got him, she kept him. The next to marry was Marion. The union of Irish blood with the Rochelle's Huguenot Irish genes continued into this generation. Mary Cronin of Casper had caught the eye of Marion Rochelle when he came to town. She eventually caught him and his name. They are pictured on wedding day, attended by Marion's sister, Jean Rochelle Osborne, and their brother, Barry Cronin. Curtis had left the Natrona County Rochelle sheepherder job description and was in Rawlins managing a sheep operation of several thousand head when he married Jamie Dixon of Rawlins. Kay Osborne, aged 3 or 4, thought it mighty special for her uncle to plan such a party on her birthday, June 24th. The Rochelles of Wyoming, who were available, attended. As the shadow of war fell across the nation, Ogden became a member of the U.S. Army as a war correspondent. Already married and divorced, he arrived for a family reunion with a wonderful new bride from Florida, Rose Mills. They too spent their life roaming the United States as he continued to stay away from the sheep business and pursue a career in journalism. The group picture taken when Ogden had brought Rose home shows in the back row Rodney, Marion, now grandmother and grandfather Rochelle, Curtis, and front row Jean with daughter Kay, Mary with son Bill, Rose, Jamie, and Ogden. The photo was taken at Natrona County High School with grass and shrubbery this time. Rodney and his Rita, another Irish woman with the last name of Kelleher, were married at St. Anthony's Catholic Church in Casper, site of many Rochelle weddings, baptisms, and, of course, funerals. This wedding, too, was a family affair with members of the Kelleher and Rochelles participating. Grandfather Rochelle in uniform on the steps of their quarters in Casper. As the crowded quarters on 8th Street finally emptied, Kate and Albert found themselves housed in roomier quarters at last in town. The ranch at Arminto still in operation also. The later years of their lives were much more prosperous. Kathleen Rochelle had become known as a civic leader, poet, a lover of beautiful hats, giver of great programs, a great grandma, and traveler. She is shown atop the Rockefeller Center in New York while visiting. Albert Rochelle, semi-retired at last, finally took his hat off. He is shown at their place on 8th Street, obviously at Christmas time. Their place was not crowded anymore, except at holiday dinners when chaos reigned again, with the Rochelles home with their wives, husbands, and now grandchildren. Albert and the grandchildren were keepers of the secret stash of chocolate-covered cherries, which he is shown indulging in. Who remembers where he kept them? The Rochelles as adults have made their mark as they have journeyed through life. Ogden pursued his career in journalism, eventually becoming editor of one of the papers he worked for. His path led him into and out of Wyoming several times during his life. He and his Rose eventually settled in California, with several moves within the state. They are both deceased. Marion and Mary made Casper home, with a home in later years in Arizona also. Marion was a partner in Rochelle Sheep Company, experiencing less hardship than his father and mother had, but still not an easy life. Mary kept the home fires burning along with their 4 children, Bill, Lynn, Rosemary, and Catherine. Rodney and his Irish lass Rita became the parents of 6 children, somehow in between lambing, shearing, shipping, and whatever else people involved in the sheep business do. He, too, was a partner in Rochelle Sheep Company. Their eldest child is Jim. John is deceased. Ann, Joe, Tom, and Pat. Rodney died in 1993. Rita continues to reside in the family home on Elm Street and provides services as a way station for visiting relatives. Curtis continues in the ranching business as well as other ventures. Fortune has smiled upon him over the years in the sheep and cattle ranching business in Carbon County, the automobile business, and telecommunications business, among other interests. In 1985, he married Marion Brimmer, wife of a lifelong friend, Bill Brimmer, deceased. With Marion at his side, he continues to be active in various business enterprises with Kathleen and Jim. Kurt and Marion divide their time between homes in Rawlins, Cheyenne, and Phoenix, Arizona. Margaret and her George, deceased, crossed paths with family during their many moves as a result of his employment as an engineer with the Bureau of Reclamation. She has recently moved from Salida, Colorado, to Loveland. Bill, Bob, and John visit often. Jean, now retired, and Emmett, deceased, spent their lives together engaged in the pursuit of perfecting the fine art of retailing. Emmett used his training with the Penny Company to use for the foundation in forming Osborne Shoe Stores and later Osborne Enterprises Incorporated. And Jean fine-tuned her retailing skills, first by selling other people's cast-offs and later as the owner of The Place, a ladies' ready-to-wear store in hometown of Riverton, Wyoming, where they raised their 2 children, Kay and Rod. The closing picture of the Rochelles of Wyoming shows the 6 living offspring of Kathleen and Albert Rochelle together for one last picture at the time of one of their parents' funerals. Curtis, Ogden, Marion, Rodney, Margaret, and Jean. As time goes on, the family tree planted by Kate Ogden and Albert Rochelle has undergone growth, pruning, devastation, and the bearing of fruit, just as a tree growing in the earth for decades does. The entwining of the stories of those who have gone before us provides nourishment for this family tree, for new strength, new growth, and the sturdiness to last in decades to come. As the harsh wind and snows of winter bend the tree, it will continue to stand, soon to be bathed in the glorious light of the sun of spring, surrounded by cobalt blue sky, the hills scented with the aura sublime written of in the poem, another life cycle continuing. The tree will remain standing tall in wonderful Wyoming.
Home, home on the range, where the deer and the antelope play, where seldom is heard a discouraging word, and the skies are not cloudy all day. Oh, I love the wildflowers in this dear land of ours, and the eagle I love to hear scream. I love the red rocks and the antelope flocks that graze on the mountain tops green.